Let's talk a little bit about some of the lessons learned by Democrats and Democratic operatives following the presidential election, in which, of course, Democrats were shellacked. But nonetheless, let's get to the details. Kamala Harris's deputy campaign manager, a man by the name of Bob Flaherty, am I saying that right? Flaherty, yes, has some groundbreaking thoughts about the value of using mainstream media to win campaigns. And by groundbreaking, what I specifically mean is that he's come to conclusions that we have been talking about on this show for literally years. But
and
nonetheless,
doesn't mean it.
Yeah, probably. You're probably right about that. But let's take what he's saying at face value for the purposes of this discussion. So, in an interview with Max Taney over at Semafor, he says that there's just no value with respect to my colleagues in the mainstream press in a general election to speaking to the New York Times or speaking to the Washington Post, because those readers are already with us. I want to pause there already. Why are those voters, or I'm sorry, those readers already with you? I mean, there's a little bit of an admission there, no? That there's a bit of a slant in the reporting.
100%.
Yeah.
So look, guys, and remember, he's an establishment Democrat. So what he's saying about the New York Times and Washington Post is 100% true. When the right wing says that their left wing outlets are progressive or liberal or et cetera, that's only half true, because they're left wing on all social issues, okay? But they are not left wing on corporate issues. On corporate issues, they're arguably what used to be called right wing, but very pro-establishment, pro-status quo. But that's exactly where the establishment Democratic Party is and where Kamala Harris is and Joe Biden is. So they're like New York Times and Washington Post is basically our propaganda outlets. Yeah. So there's no need for us to go talk to our people who report into us. We're their boss. And that's true.
Yeah. So that admission was incredible. But let me continue with the rest of what he had to say. He says, when Trump did the McDonald's thing, it was smart. It was smart. He's right about that. It was smart because it was a thing that obviously drove television coverage, but it also drove social media engagement too. And those things often happen in tandem, but they don't always. And so it was the sweet spot. It drove traditional coverage and non-traditional coverage. By the way, another example was Trump's decision to go to East Palestine, Ohio after that Norfolk Southern train derailment. And he did that before any of the Democrats did. He went to a McDonald's there and bought food for all the first responders. That was smart. And I remember getting a lot of hate for admitting that that was smart. But listen, game understands game. And when you see a politician basically carry out really, really smart campaign strategies, the Democrats should learn from that instead of going after pundits or media figures who give Donald Trump credit for engaging in smart campaign tactics.
No, look, I gotta be honest, that one really bothers me, because we said here, hey, that was a smart photo op, good strategy by Trump, and all the Kamala fans that were like, oh, you guys are betraying us and you're supporting Donald Trump.
You're secretly right wing.
So you're secretly right wing, et cetera. Meanwhile, it turns out at Kamala headquarters, they were saying the same exact thing we were, which is, oh my God, we got played. That McDonald's photo op was brilliant, and it worked perfectly in mainstream media and in online media, just like we told you. But they know that, but they still sent their minions out to attack us.
Yep.
For having the correct opinion.
Correct.
Because God forbid you should turn around and actually run a smart campaign.
There's more. He also says, quote, I don't think TV is dead. It's still probably the most important thing, but it's the literal TV and what's on it that matters.
Let me explain what that means for folks who might not understand what he's mean. Like, TV used to be what we used to call cable, right? But he's now saying on TV, there's also smart TVs, and there's also YouTube, and there's all these different things. So they might be watching the TV set, the literal TV, but they're not watching the cable that we thought they're watching. They're not watching MSNBC, CNN, they're watching, Rogan on Spotify or Young Turks on YouTube or whatever it might be. And so he's at least woken up to that way, way, way too late, right?
Yep.
I mean, this is 10, 20 years too late. We've been saying this and we've been called radicals the entire time. Yep. And they're never gonna change, but keep going.
So later on in the campaign, Flaherty said that he actually realized their failure to gain traction in alternative media spaces or new media spaces, and that it was reflective of a much deeper problem for the Democratic Party, which, by the way, is definitely true. He's concerned about the Democratic Party losing the culture. Okay.
Yes, 100%.
So let me give you his exact verbatim quotes. So this is from Semafor. They write that the Harris campaign, representing what many voters saw as an embodiment of the status quo, was running contrary not just to ideological distrust of establishment figures, but to media trends. The media successes of 2024 were independent, non-traditional online personalities who themselves were avatars of the rewards of going up against the establishment. And then he says, quote, "The reason folks are seeking alternative sources of media and are turning away from political news is because they don't trust our institutions." That's absolutely right. They don't trust elites, they don't trust the media, they don't trust all this stuff. So the party of elites and institutions is going to have a hard time selling to people in these places.
Okay, I gotta jump in there too. But why do you think they don't trust those institutions? For the exact reason you said in the beginning, which is, well, we already control the New York Times and Washington Post and CNN, etc. Well, that's why they don't trust them, because they know you control them. They know that they're going to say exactly what your candidates are saying. They know that that's why were people so outraged Washington Post, LA Times didn't endorse, because they assume that they must endorse and will endorse Kamala Harris. You must tell everyone to bow their head and support the establishment candidate. So that's why they lost credibility, because no one believes they're honest. They believe that they're pushing out an establishment agenda. Look, again, the right wing, in my opinion, misses it. They think that, oh, it's left wing versus right wing. No, it's establishment versus populist. Those same papers love Mitch McConnell. They love all the establishment Republicans, the guys that the right wing calls rhinos, because they're also corporate politicians. And the thing that the New York Times, Washington Post, and CNN and MSNBC will get together and do a circle, you know what, around, is whenever Joe Biden and Mitch McConnell come up with a bipartisan deal to cut taxes for the rich.
Because it's always in favor of corporations.
Always.
And to the detriment of the American people.
Bipartisanship, we love this. And meanwhile, the country's vomiting it. They hate it, right?
Yep.
And then they wonder how they lost credibility. That's how you lost credibility, brother. And so you want to fund corporate robots to do the news for you and push out your message. But you're missing it, brother. In online media, robots don't work. Authenticity works.
That's exactly right. And so they did do big ad buys for independent news, right? So YouTube channels, for instance, that were incredibly friendly to Kamala Harris. So if they noticed that there were some news shows on independent media and they were more favorable to Kamala Harris, they pumped those shows with money. But it's arguably no different than investing in mainstream media platforms where audiences are also largely agree with wanting to vote for Kamala Harris anyway, right? Like the point is to reach out to undecided and independent voters. And those voters, by the way, aren't gonna be watching hyper-partisan YouTube channels.
Yeah, and so look, now to information I have that these folks don't, which is that they demand propaganda. So they will not advertise on any show that questions them.
Right.
And they don't support any kind of media that would ever question them, even 1%. So then what do you think is gonna happen to you online? You're gonna, fund and support propaganda outlets that act like robots, that are totally disingenuous. Will you get a whole bunch of blue and on folks to watch that? Yes, you will, right? And then they'll go, yes, Joe Biden is young, Joe Biden is dynamic, Joe Biden's in charge, he's the best candidate we've ever had, right? Because that's what their hosts are telling them 24/7, that's what they wanted to hear anyway. Is that gonna help you win an election? No, not at all, because they're not addressing a single undecided voter. But when you come to shows like ours, filled to the rim with undecided voters, they go, no, you don't support us and you won't do our marketing and our propaganda. So we don't care about your undecided voters. We're gonna spend our money on decided voters who already love us. Okay, good luck to you, brothers and sisters. But if you constantly attack your media that's on the left wing, that is actually authentic, well, then you don't be surprised. What happened to our side? How come the right wing's bigger online now? We were paying everyone for propaganda. Why didn't it work? Because that's not how it works online. Get it through your thick head, but they won't. They'll learn absolutely nothing from this. I'm positive of it.
So let's talk a little bit about culture, because I would venture to say that the Democrats losing touch with culture has also been it's been to the detriment of the Democratic Party. And like this elitism and we're better than everyone else attitude, it's not gonna play out so well. So he acknowledged that Democrats have lost touch with voters in part because of mainstream media's growing irrelevance. He says the campaigns in many ways are last mile marketers that exist on terrain that is set by culture. And the institutions by which Democrats have historically had the ability to influence culture are losing relevance. You don't get a national 8-point shift to the right without losing hold of culture. I mean, that is absolutely true. And in fact, something that I've been vocalizing to my own detriment because of all the hate I've been getting for it is the parties have kind of flipped culturally in certain areas. So back in 2007, 2008, I remember the party that was the most censorious and the least willing to hear ideas that conflicted with their own preconceived notions was the right wing, okay? They were the ones who were constantly crying about comedians. And I hated it. I thought they were so pathetic and weak. And now you see a lot of that taking place on the left. And so just consider how that comes across to ordinary Americans, especially in an electoral cycle. He says the solution isn't as simple as just going on Joe Rogan's podcast, and I agree with him on that. You've got to speak their language, and I think there are plenty of cultural touch points. I mean, Joe Rogan was at least recently for Medicare for all. Theo Von is really against money in politics and the way that pharma has flooded our communities with opioids. Those are all things that Democrats have something to say on. And yet, that is true, that is true. But as long as we seem like the party of the system, the people who are anti-system and are looking for anti-systemic media, we're going to have a hard time connecting with them.
Yeah, because look, so does he understand it now better than almost all the other Democratic consultants? It sounds like it. So a lot of what he said there is true. But even for him, I would be shocked if the next time around he's like, guys, that's why we need to find an authentic populist candidate that can actually fight for universal health care and all these things that actually are enormously popular in the country, but our side never fights for, right? We might have it as our policy on a website somewhere, but we never get caught trying to actually pass those bills, right? No, he's not gonna say that. My guess is, and it's a guess, brother, you could prove me wrong, that he's gonna say, no, we need to have a new script for our new and improved corporate robots, and those corporate robot 2.0, i.e. Pete Buttigieg or Gavin Newsom, will come out there. We are slightly better corporate robots. We have been trained for more authenticity, right? It's not gonna work. And so why are they gonna go in that direction, and why am I so confident about it? Because the root of the problem isn't how they message. The root of the problem is that they take the corporate money and they serve the corporate money. If they didn't serve the corporate money, all this would be super easy. You just go on Rogan or Young Turks or anywhere and you just say, God damn right, we're gonna stand up for the American people. We're gonna get you higher wages through higher minimum wage and other actions. We're gonna preserve your jobs. We're gonna fight for your health care. We're gonna get you paid family leave. But they're never gonna do that because when they go to ask permission for their donor cause, may I please, sir, fight for a little bit of health insurance for the American people. No, shut up. Okay. Well, if you're a candidate like that, which all of the establishment Democrats are like that, it doesn't matter if you give them a new script. It doesn't matter if you set up new propaganda outlets online as opposed to mainstream media. Never going to work, okay? Because of the, and so that's the core political reason. The core cultural reason, I'll just expand on what Anna is saying. So number one, first of all, that hatred of the establishment is part of the culture now, because that establishment has not led to a good life for most Americans. Top 10% live like kings, and they're super happy. That is why they are genuinely bewildered why anyone is upset. They're like, what do you mean? This is a great country. I'm living great. What? Oh, these ungrateful millennials, etc. Right? And Gen Z, oh, they're so ungrateful. No, brothers and sisters, they live a different life than you, but you won't listen to them because all you do is listen to the donors. But that's not all. Culturally, again, inauthenticity doesn't work. Corporate robots don't work. And then to Anna's point, look, I hated that the Republicans had become the authoritarian party. What I realized was they were always the authoritarian party. I write about it in my book, Justice is Coming, right? But now we're over here, and all of a sudden, we got the authoritarians on this side as well. So you got the establishment saying you're not allowed to step an inch outside the guardrails, otherwise you're a radical. We cut off funding, we cut off access, we cut off everything. We try everything in the world to destroy you first before we even get to the Republicans, because we secretly agree with the Republicans on our corporate agenda. But you populist progressives are a real pain in the ass, so we hate you. Okay, well, that's authoritarian, okay? Telling me what I can't say is authoritarian. And then all of a sudden, some portion of the left slipped into radical left, and they started saying what you're not allowed to say. Okay, no, that's gonna hurt the bodies of Asians and Indonesians. That's it, you're hurting bodies. You're hurting bodies, okay? So now you're not allowed to say that. You're not allowed to disagree. I'm the king here. Who the hell elected you king or mayor, etc.? And who are you to say what we can and can't say? And part of it is this shaming culture. And you know who likes shaming? No one likes shaming. This whole like, yeah, I think everyone who disagrees with me is a racist, sexist, blah, 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 blah. Okay, hey, brother, sometimes they are racist and sexist. But if you say it every time about everyone, then it loses all power. And what it does is it makes you look like an ass who's making it up, which actually hurts the cause of fighting racism and sexism. What it does is it supports your cause of seeing the most pure. You're not allowed to say it, I'm the most pure, right? Okay, well, you became authoritarian and I hate it. So that's, on the policies, we're never ever gonna change. But if they keep telling us, both the establishment Democrats and the radical left, that you're not allowed to disagree with them, no one wants that. The whole country hates that. You've got to get that through your thick head, otherwise you're going to get annihilated in these elections. When we have the popular policies, you're burying our policies in your culture of shaming and authoritarianism.
Yeah, it's a super narcissistic thing to do. It's about an individual as opposed to what's best for the country.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR, so those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.